Welcome back to the Footbox channel, where today I'm just going to give you my view on England's latest double-header in the European Championship qualifiers, where we played the Czech Republic in a 2-1 defeat, followed by that 6-0 win away in Sofia against Bulgaria. Obviously, there was a lot of things that made the press, and sadly, the racism that was on display in Sofia took the headlines, other than the fact that probably should have was the football reasons that England won 6-0. So I'm just going to start with just talking briefly about the games themselves before I go on to the stuff that happened off the field. The Czech Republic defeat was probably the worst performance in Gareth Southgate's tenure so far. Just a few things and a few pointers from my point of view. Starting lineup, Mason Mount made his full England debut, which, you know, on paper wasn't a bad choice, but as the game panned out, he did look, to be honest, a little bit lost. He didn't look as though he knew what he was meant to be doing. He was all over the pitch. He looked a bit lightweight at times, and he just didn't link up well with the front three. He played too close to Sterling, almost wanted to play in off the left himself. And the front three, I think, needed a proper number 10, which they got in the following game. For me, Ross Barkley should have started over Mason Mount, and that was a bad choice. Again, Henderson and Rice was a bit too defensive, and England lacked creativity, but they lacked that bite in midfield. You think with two defensive midfielders, there'd be some bite and there'd be some pressing on the Czechs, but I think there was a stat where between the two of them, they made one tackle all game. The passing was terrible. Henderson just kept giving the ball away. Rice just couldn't get to the ball. And there was not enough creativity. And Southgate, I think, now needs to look at that against the lesser teams. Why are we showing them too much respect? Why are we starting two defensive midfielders? And it's negating the fact that we've got all these creative players that can get the front three involved. And you saw Harry Kane having to try and drop deep and almost play as a false number 9. Mason Mount just didn't play as a 10. He didn't really know what he was doing. Therefore, Sterling, apart from winning the penalty, hardly got in the game. Jadon Sancho, again, got forward once at the end of the first half, but hardly got in the game. But the fullbacks, they did not go over the halfway line until we were behind with 5-6 minutes left on the clock. There wasn't enough width, there wasn't enough creativity, and there wasn't enough desire from that England team at all. And as a result, the Czechs, give them some credit. They had a game plan. They tried to stop England playing out from the back, and with that high press, and they won a lot of the ball. And the second balls, the 21 in midfield, Carl, I think his name was, fantastic player, and he really got in English faces. And we didn't have the answers. Some of the players towards the end of the game, you could just see they just had almost given up, and they were almost resigning to the fact that we're not going to score again. We haven't got the answers, and it was a really disappointing performance from the England players. And as I say, I think Southgate, there was no real positives to take out of it. He went into that game with some questions off the back of that second half against Kosovo, but the Czech Republic game probably gave him more questions. He didn't answer any of the questions. He had more difficulties. Again, Keane at the back didn't look comfortable. Harry Maguire, to be fair, didn't look comfortable. And what does he do with Danny Rose, who just seems to want to throw himself around and get booked? Didn't want to get up the pitch. But I thought Trippier again, he didn't want to get up the pitch at all. And I'll talk about the difference in Bulgaria in a second. What I just want to talk about briefly is England fans in Prague. What we saw reported on Sky Sports News was majority of those fans didn't actually have tickets to the game, and they stayed in the Old Town. From what I could see at one of the Irish bars, they stayed in the Old Town while the game was on, and the police moved in. And it got a little bit tasty in terms of the police having to throw in some flashbangs and disperse the crowds. And that's just the way they handled it. They were dressed up as like Robo-Cops out there, and it's what they do. But on the whole, the England fans in Prague were absolutely fantastic. The atmosphere in the stadium on Friday night was one of the best England away atmospheres I've seen so far. I think there was about 3,700 England fans in there. And other than the performance, it was a really great night to follow the boys and the behaviour of the England fans inside the stadium. On the whole, was fantastic. There was a small minority of idiots that were pictured doing some Nazi signs, taking the mick out of the Czechs, which I'll come on to again, as we saw in Bulgaria. There's no place for that in football, but credit to the England fans on the whole in Prague. They were impeccable. It's just this small minority, and it is a minority. When you go out there and you follow England, you generally see it for what it is. You don't see these glamorised reports in the Mail or from Sky Sports. It is a minority of idiots that have one too many jars, and they play up. So on to Bulgaria. Now, Sofia itself is an interesting place. It's not the most glamorous of places. Being an Eastern European outpost, it's not going to be similar to Prague as a sort of destination for city breaks, stag do's and things like that. It's not the biggest of places. There's not a lot to do there. The weather was absolutely fantastic, and the main strip is lined with bars, as most are in the European cities. And England fans congregated down there. And the first day that certainly I was there with my group of friends, it was 25, 26 degrees, baking hot. Everyone was in good spirits, and it wasn't actually too bad. We went to get your tickets and things like that. And the atmosphere was generally good. England fans just drinking in the sun. And then there was some reports later in the evening that there was a few skirmishes between some Brighton and Crystal Palace fans and some Newcastle and Sunderland fans. And you saw a few things kicking off. But again, I just want to reiterate, these are a small minority of idiots that just need to leave the club rivalry at home. If you're going to follow England away for things like that, it's just stupid, and you just don't need it. And it does put a tarnish on the genuine fans that go out there and spend a lot of money following England. And it builds up this reputation that England does have a culture of hooliganism, and it does have a culture of drinking problems and things like that, which it does. And you're stupid enough if you say it doesn't. But on the whole, the majority of people that go out to watch England away, in my experience, are genuine football fans that go there to support the England team the right way. But you do get these minority of idiots that have the club rivalry and just want to go out there and pick fights. Was there locals involved at that point? There was conflicting reports. Personally, I didn't see much until I got inside the stadium in terms of the locals causing problems at all, which I'll come on to. So in terms of the team lineup, the changes that Southgate made did make the difference on the night from the off. And Bulgaria, let me just put that out there, Bulgaria are a lot of a worse team than the Czech Republic. Let's not get ahead of ourselves here. They are poor, and they are bottom of the group for a reason. But the changes Southgate made needed to happen. They did make the difference. So shout out to Tyrone Mings. He didn't put a foot wrong. Yes, we didn't have a lot to do defensively, but he generally didn't put a foot wrong. He was imperious, good in possession. Passing was on point, and he took chances. He brought the ball out from the back a few times, and he looked comfortable in that position. And for me, he's gone ahead of Keane. He's gone ahead of Gomez, because Gomez isn't playing club football at the moment. And, he is now on John Stones' heels when John Stones comes back fit. And with Kosovo and Montenegro coming up, I'd give Tyrone Mings another couple of games, because you don't know if John Stones is going to be fit by then. And he had a good debut. Harry Winks, he compliments Henderson in the fact that Henderson can be a little bit more free. He doesn't have to defend so much, and he doesn't have to go sideways with his passing as much. And he can look for the passes, because he knows Winks is there in behind him, being a pest, doing the ugly bits. But the one thing I liked about Harry Winks, he's got that quality on the ball, and he looks to be creative. He can take the ball on the half turn. He's got that low centre of gravity, but he gets stuck in as well. There was a number of times on Monday evening where Bulgaria did threaten to counter-attack, and Winks was there. He was winning every second ball. He was going in for the 50-50s. He never shirked a challenge, and he was up for it. And that's what we lacked in Prague on the Friday night, and it was good to see. And for me, Winks looked comfortable in the England shirt. He played in Seville in a similar position. He looked good that night, and England got the result that night. Monday evening, did a similar job role against a lesser team, yes, but he'd done it well. And he, for me now, is ahead of Declan Rice, who has been poor in the last two England appearances. Moving up to the number 10 position, Ross Barkley, again in an England shirt. I've waxed lyrical about him for the last sort of 3-4 months. He does it when he plays at number 10 in an England shirt. He does it at the moment. He creates goals, he scores goals, and he looks comfortable in that number 10 position. He plays with that freedom. He brings Harry Kane into the game. Harry Kane works well with him, little flick-ons around the corner, passing into feet, which allows Sterling in this game, Marcus Rashford, to get out wide and threaten the opposition fullbacks and run at them, and that's what we saw. Rashford got forward early and scored. Harry Kane was coming wide. The fullbacks were getting forward. 2 or 3 of the England goals were tap-ins because of the width we've created, because of the channels down the centre and people running off of Harry Kane wide. And it looked comfortable, and it looked that I had that cohesion. And a few of us were saying in the stadium on the night, there's no coincidence that this team was almost the same as the team that played in Seville and beat Spain, with the same setup that evening. They scored similar goals. They had the width, and the front 3 or the front 4 with Barkley in behind was the same. And it wasn't a coincidence. Trippier and Chilwell were the fullbacks that evening. They were again in Bulgaria. They got forward with intent. They had some width. They were putting balls in the box. Yes, we were playing a poor opposition. I'm not getting ahead of myself by any means, but it's about what England do now, going forward, looking towards the Euros. We need to find the best solutions. We need to find the answer to the questions: who plays where, who partners Maguire, what do we do with that midfield 3? Do we play 4 at the back? Do we go to a back 3? What do we do with the who plays on the left? Sterling looks like he's cemented his place in there, and quite rightly, England's best player by a mile at the moment. And all of this is good preparation, and we need a point to qualify. We move on to Montenegro at home. I'm quite confident we'll get that point. We should beat them on the night at Wembley. Then we go out to Pristina to play Kosovo, and this gives Gareth Southgate the chance now to get these questions answered. Should some of the fringe players have had more minutes in Bulgaria, being fallen up at half-time? Potentially. But it was good to see some of them come on at the end. It gave Mount another sort of 20 minutes. He looked a bit better. I think he'd been spoken to about sticking in that position, and having watched Barkley show him what good looks like in that position, he come off the bench and he played a lot better than he did. He did more in that 20 minutes than he'd done in the whole game against the Czech Republic. Callum Wilson came on and showed that he can play off the left-hand side. He linked up well with the fullbacks. He linked up well with Harry Kane and the rest of the team. So that was good to see. And I think the games coming forward, you'll see more questions answered, but you will also see Southgate stick with that core, because I think in his mind, he now needs to work out his best 11 going into these major tournaments. And it'd be interesting to see when the draw's made who England face and what that does in terms of preparation in the spring. So I just want to finish on the unfortunate events in the evening on Monday with the racism. So as an England fan that was out there, we felt a little bit edgy with the evening as it progressed, with the stories that were developing, and having walked up to the stadium from the main centre, which is about a 20-minute walk, just over a mile. We were told to avoid the park outside the stadium for obvious reasons. There were reports that some England fans had been attacked there the previous morning. But whether that was true or not, we didn't know. So it was a bit of an edge. But what I would say is the police presence was strong from the moment we got into Sofia. There was police stationed outside our hotel. There was police on the way to the main strip. There was police all the way up the main strip onto where England fans were collecting their tickets. And as we walked down to the stadium, there was police lining the route. And when you got to the stadium, the police had made like a ring of security, if you like, and they were a little bit poor in terms of directing us to where we needed to go, but I feel that was more of a language barrier. Got to the turnstiles, again, heavily policed, quite easy to get in. We did arrive particularly early because we were told that there could be some issues getting in a bit later. My personal preference is to get to the ground and soak up the atmosphere. Once we were in the ground, it's your typical old school Eastern European ground with a running track. It wasn't actually as bad as I thought it would be, and the view was pretty good. And the England fans were fantastic all evening, and the atmosphere built. And unfortunately, there was some racist abuse, which was expected, if we're honest. Southgate had prepped his players, and from where we were, we couldn't hear it because of the atmosphere in the England end. But it was clear something was happening when the players got called over the first time. But the unity that the England fans had when the game was halted for a second time, had it happened again for a third time, I 100% believe that every England supporter in that ground that evening would have stood with the boys. If they'd have walked off, they would have stood with the boys. They would have been behind them 100%. What we could see inside the stadium was a pocket of about 200 to 300 ultras dressed in black with flags, Levski Sofia ultras. There was about 200 of them away to the right hand side at the bottom tier, and there was a pocket of another 150 or so directly opposite where the England fans were on the other side of the stadium, just after the bit that UEFA had closed off. There was clear monkey chants on the footage that I've watched back since I've been home, but in the stadium, just before half time, the stewards moved in and removed the vast majority of these fans who left the stadium. Whether that was through their own accordance, I don't know. But what it seemed like and what we're saying on the night is these pockets of Bulgarians came to the stadium for one purpose, and that was to be there to abuse players racially and to make these Nazi salutes, and they weren't there for footballing reasons. And it's tarnished the rest of the Bulgarian fans that did turn up and tried to support their team the best they could. Again, you've got these absolute idiots that are living in a backwards system and a backwards society having these views. And it does put a tarnish on it. And I'm not saying the England fans are perfect, because there was pockets in the England support that during the Bulgarian national anthem decided to start booing. The sound system was terrible, and I personally didn't even hear the start of the national anthems. It wasn't obviously until the England fans started singing it we could actually hear that it had worked. There wasn't really a sound system, and a tannoy system to a public address system in amongst the England fans. We didn't hear the announcements for the racist abuse to stop. But we're not perfect. We have it in English football week in, week out. And as I say, we've been charged for disrupting the national anthem, which you can't argue with. You were there on the night. There are small pockets of England fans that do sing during the opposition's national anthem and do boo. The band started playing, which was a bit weird, and I think that's due to the fact that the sound system was poor. And there are problems to address, but Sofia itself and the Bulgarian society, it had a weird edge to it, and there was clearly some societal issues that need addressing. And it's good to see that in terms of the football on the pitch, England stood firm with the fans, and they answered it. It was a good performance, and we go on to the next qualifiers. But on the whole, it was a great trip. And for those that are listening that maybe have contemplated doing England away before and are unsure of it, and they read things like the racist abuse and England fans getting attacked, let me just reiterate that these are small incidents. These are minorital incidents. This isn't anything to put you off going and supporting England away. It is one of the best things you can choose to do. If you're going out there for football reasons, believe me, you will not regret it. It's the best hobby you can have. But we go on to the next set of games. That's rounded up this trip. So thanks for listening. Like, share, comment and subscribe if you've got any thoughts, feelings, ideas on what UEFA need to do going forward and what the England team need to do going forward in terms of their performances. And anything you just want to post, feel free to do so. But thanks very much for listening. I know Kev will be back on the Fantasy Premier League videos as we go back into the Premier League this weekend. So please get on those as well. Get the subscriber count up for us. All support is appreciated. So thanks very much, guys. That's me, Tom, and out for the Footbox.